Welcome back to the Convention of States, live simulation. We're broadcasting live all over the world, and this has been incredible. I'd like to introduce Senator Dr. Tom Coburn, formerly known as Dr. No, or still maybe known as Dr. No.
Retired former senator.
Retired former Senator Dr. Tom Coburn.
Now Dr. Yes to Convention of States.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yes, that's right.
So, Senator, let me ask you this. What have you thought about the entire process so far, and especially what's going on right now?
Well, one, given that this is a mock convention, I love the intensity of the legislators.
They're not taking it lightly.
No, they're not. They're looking straight at this, and you know, these are issues that are really dear to them, but they're also issues that are really dear to the American people. And so, even though we're in mock mode, it doesn't seem that way at all in this room.
The thing that has impressed me the most is the careful consideration that these guys are applying to the job that they're doing.
Right. Right. It's exciting for me to see the thought. You know, these aren't new concepts. They've been talked about a long time.
Yeah.
And that you can tell these members, these commissioners, have actually thought about all these things for a long time and thought about the downside as well as the upside. So I think some really reasoned judgment in the room, which is what I would expect out of the actual convention.
Yeah.
And knowledgeable people coming to make their points, and I'm excited. The quality of what's been offered has been very good as well.
The thing that I liked, we were talking about this earlier. They're not just willy-nilly passing things. I mean,
Right.
they have shot down proposed amendments. They're amending them with thoughtful consideration. I think it's very impressive.
Shot down things that are good ideas and things they're for, but they want to make sure they get it right. How does this change? You've been traveling the country encouraging people to consider this process. How does this change or impact how you talk to people about it now that you've seen it in action?
Well, I don't think it changes at all how we talk about it. What our problem is not enough people know about this as the solution to solve the lack of confidence, the lack of effectiveness, the financial irresponsibility that's going on in Washington. And when they find out about it, they're excited. So, one, my hope is a lot of people hear this and get to find out, wow, what's going on?
Yeah.
And number two is, we can say we'd had a mock convention, and, there wasn't anything stupid here.
That's right.
Or out of control or any of those things.
No, and the rules are set. The rules have worked very effectively in terms of guiding people within certain parameters. So, I'm excited. I think it's going to be very helpful. I hope it's talked about a lot. But most importantly, I hope more people find out about what this wonderful solution our founders gave us, George Mason gave us, to be able to do this.
Well, and I think that's the most important piece, because this is a solution that is in our Constitution. It is constitutional and is the only avenue we have as citizens using our state legislators to fight back against the federal government's overreach. I mean, this is it. This is the only process we have, yes?
Well, what about just the, they always tell us just elect good people and it'll solve the problem. Look, you come out of the belly of the beast in D.C. for how many years?
Well, look,
are we going to solve it just by electing?
No, and there are great people in Washington. The quality of people is fine. The motivation is what's wrong.
Yeah.
And
the structure needs to change.
Well, actually, every decision in Washington is made on 2 points: what's best for the country versus what's best for my political career. And unfortunately, we have people who are long-term servers anymore, where the number one goal is getting reelected.
Yeah.
And we heard today in one of the comments about the average length of service that used to be in the late 19th century and the early 20th century versus how it changed after World War II.
Right.
And where we had these long-serving people, and basically what they came to Congress because they'd been long-serving in their states. And that doesn't mean they're bad people, but it means their motivation is conflicted.
Well, it was designed to be a citizen legislator.
Yeah.
It was never designed to be a career path.
Right.
And now it has become that. And, that is part of the problem. And we can have the debate about term limits all we want, but the fact that we're having that debate I think is very powerful.
And the debate about the jurisdictions, the real structures of power, where the power rests. Do you think a convention of states really can change that and shift some of the power back to the states?
I think it will really rebalance the relationship between the states and the federal government, but also rebalance the relationship between the three branches, because what our founders designed has totally been disrupted by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And by the laziness of Congress, because they've given their power away.
You mean the founders didn't envision a Supreme Court that was going to call all the shots and make all the
No,
final?
I don't think so. But it's amazing if you read the history early. Within the first 25 years, the Supreme Court was starting to undermine the Commerce Clause and the General Welfare Clause. So this idea that 7 or 9 judges know better than what our founders, what our history, and what the people want, is ludicrous. They don't know better.
In the earlier session this morning, they passed a proposed amendment that would, in fact, redefine the Commerce Clause.
Yeah.
Right, back closer to what it was intended. Because remember, the Commerce Clause is what the federal government uses through the bureaucracy to justify all sorts of regulation.
Oh, yeah. And the court has not said no to Commerce Clause expansions ever since the switch in time to save 9 in the 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, one time in the 90s they said no. And technically Roberts said no in the Obamacare case, but just shifted it to a tax. But this is a way of actually wiping out all those decisions and coming back to the original intent, both with Commerce Clause and, as you mentioned, general welfare.
That's right. And my concept of the greatness of America is it really is of the people, by the people, for the people. And that only works if most of the decision making gets made close to the people.
Yeah.
If it gets made in Washington, I represented almost 4 million people. Hard for somebody to come and get in to see me and spend 30 minutes with me, and I couldn't do that with everybody in the state. It was impossible. Everybody that wanted to see me couldn't. So if, in fact, you move most of this decision-making back to the states where you can actually hold people together, we can defeat state representatives and state senators if, in fact, they're wandering on.
Right.
We can organize as grassroots organizations, that we can organize as concerned citizens, and if somebody's actually moving away from the principles of our freedom and our liberty, we can defeat them.
Right.
It's hard to beat a sitting senator who has the power of incumbency and the millions and millions of dollars that are available to them. It's hard to do that.
Isn't that what Mason was speaking to when he put this in? I mean, he basically said when the feds get outside their box, they're not going to put themselves back in the box. The states have to be able to do that.
Yeah, he said, do you know at any time in any part of history where somebody has self-limited their own power?
Yeah. And the idea...
Cincinnatus did. He walked away. And George Washington.
And Washington walked away twice, but that's a rare... Right.
Who else has?
Right.
It's not a common occurrence because it's not in the nature of man to give up power.
And Senator, I've seen you talk over and over again about the $140 trillion worth of unfunded mandates that we have, this, that, and the other, and you always use that same example. And the idea that Washington, D.C. will pass any amendment or any piece of legislation that somehow limits its own power is absurd in this day and age.
Well,
it is.
I will tell you, I have one observation, that if we're successful with an Article 5 Convention of States to offer amendments, the first thing you're going to see is the things we've been talking about, Congress
going to try to do it, yeah.
You bet.
Yeah.
Because, they don't want to give up their power. They want to control this. And so the very fact that citizens are now rising up, they're rising up because of the interference in your daily life. They're rising up because of the interference in your state government. And they're rising up because the fact is they bankrupted this country.
Senator Tom Coburn, thank you for joining us. We're going to go back and see what's going on the floor, and we're going to continue to watch the debate. We will be back.
These people are tired of federal overreach.
We've been going back and forth. We've been debating amendments. We had committee hearings yesterday.
Today's the day. The winds of change are about to blow.
I can see the optimism.
It's exciting to meet legislators from across the country.
And just the electricity, the energy to discuss solutions.
It was the most extraordinary thing in my career that I've ever been a part of.
It shows a commitment to wanting to do it right.
None of us have ever seen this before, right?
That our founding fathers were, in fact, right yet again.
The process actually works.
The very idea that I stood where Patrick Henry